Starting off this countdown, we have the double agent. One of the FBI's biggest concerns is having a double agent a part of their team, and this happened to them multiple times. One time was in 1962. So a KGB agent known as Alexei Kulak walked into the FBI office. Now this was a bold move for him because just 3 blocks away was the Soviet UN mission. An FBI agent asked him if he was worried that they were watching the FBI building, and he replied with, "No, all of your people are out covering a meeting with your guy Dick." And that one sentence started a lengthy investigation. Who was Dick? Clearly, they thought he was a double agent. They spent decades trying to find this spy on their staff. At first, they interviewed anyone named Dick or Richard, while trying to keep everything hush-hush so that the mole wouldn't find out. They went through thousands of agents and spent countless hours trying to find this man. To this day, the FBI is maintaining its silence on this. Moving on at number 9, we have Ricky McCormick. On June 30th, 1999, the body of Ricky McCormick was found in a cornfield in West Alton, Missouri. In his pocket were 2 pages of handwritten notes. The notes were written in a complex cipher. They consisted of a number of random letters and numbers. The FBI believes that, and I quote, "breaking this code could reveal the victim's whereabouts before his death and could lead to the solution of a homicide." However, so far it's been impossible to crack. The FBI does believe that Ricky was murdered, and we still don't know why or by who. In our 8th spot, we have Jerome EZELL. On November 7th, 2017, Jerome EZELL was reported missing in Lansing, Michigan. Later, police found his car, but there were no signs of Jerome. That was until over a month later. On December 12th, 2018, Jerome was found dead in a wooden area. Foul play is suspected. To this day, no one knows what happened to him. The FBI is offering up to $10,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the individual or individuals responsible for the murder of Jerome. In our 7th spot, we have Operation Ghost Stories. Around the early 2000s, the FBI learned that there were multiple sets of Russian spies in the US posing as everyday Americans. That's when Operation Ghost Stories came into play, and this was one of the largest counterintelligence investigations in history. In the end, it led to the arrest of 10 agents by 2010, and this was not an easy thing to do. Nonetheless, learning about potential spies is one thing that the FBI fears. Coming in at number 6, we have the Zodiac Killer. Just last year, it was announced that the infamous serial killer known as the Zodiac Killer was identified. However, the supposed killer, a man named Gary Francis Port, died in 2018. But the FBI clearly knows something that we don't know, because shortly after they shut down the claim that Gary was the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer is believed to be responsible for at least 5 murders in Northern California from 1968 to 1969. But the killer would write notes and taunt the police and claim to have killed as many as 37 people. This has been a cold case forever. The FBI says that the case is still open and shut down any claims that the killer was identified. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with CLIVEN BUNDY. This was a huge scandal for the FBI as they were found to be withholding and destroying key evidence in this case. So basically in 2014, Bundy and his sons and supporters were involved in an armed standoff with the Bureau of Land Management due to unpaid cattle grazing fees and restrictions. In January of 2018, a federal judge threw out all the criminal charges against Bundy. A part of this was due to the fact that the FBI misplaced or hid a thumb drive with key evidence to this case. It's very messy, and the FBI got in huge trouble for it. In our 4th spot today, we have the Russians. During Trump's presidency, the FBI actually opened a case to look into whether Trump was actually working alongside the Russians or not. And if he wasn't, they knew he was badly compromised. They said that he was compromised for, and I quote, his questionable business dealings, the hush money paid on his behalf to silence women, shady transactions at his charity, and most importantly, his lies about his Russian dealings, including his secret 2015 effort to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, even as he told the world that he had no business with Russia. So Trump's secret ties with Russia and Putin certainly had the FBI concerned. In our third spot today, we have Pizzagate. In March 2016, the personal Gmail account of a former White House chief of staff and chair of Hillary Clinton's 2016 US presidential campaign was hacked, and his emails revealed some pretty disturbing things. They believe that Hillary and other people of power are part of a trafficking ring. In the emails, they use code words like pizza, cheese pizza, and hot dogs. Seems weird. Like, the emails say things like, and I quote, "I'm dreaming about your hot dog stand in Hawaii." Clearly, there's a hidden message there. Another email said Obama spent $65K on pizza and hot dogs. Again, probably another coded message. Whatever was going on, the FBI was concerned, and they were on the case trying to decipher the emails and get down to the bottom of what was really going on. Coming in at number 2, we have ALCATRAZ. In June of 1962, 3 inmates, John Anglin, his brother Clarence, and Frank Morris, escaped Alcatraz Supermax prison. They put dummy heads that they had made of plaster and flesh-tone paint in their beds to fool the night guards. They then crawled through ventilation ducts between their sinks that they had been widening for quite some time and got out into an unmonitored corridor and then hopped over the cell wall. They then used a raft that they made using over 50 raincoats, among other stolen and donated materials, and they set off into the waters. The prisoners were never caught. For 17 years, the FBI worked on this case, trying to figure out if the escapees survived or if they were on the run. They officially closed the case on December 31st, 1979. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Alonzo Brooks. On April 3rd, 2004, Alonzo Brooks disappeared after attending a house party with his friends. He was supposed to get a ride home with his friends, but one of the friends got lost on the trip to buy cigarettes and never returned back to give Brooks a ride back home. That evening, he never returned home. The following day, his boots and hat were found across the street from the home where the party took place. The local sheriff's department and Kansas State investigators searched the area in the following days, but found nothing. That was until May 1st. Alonzo's family decided to take matters into their own hands and to search the area themselves. And that's when they found Alonzo's body. Rumor has it that his body was being preserved in a freezer while police were out searching for him and then later dumped there. Several years later, the FBI announced that they were reinvestigating the case, and a new autopsy concluded that Alonzo's cause of death was homicide. So now the hunt is on to find Alonzo's killer or killers. Someone knows who did it, and they're not speaking up.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have SIM cards. In February of 2015, it was reported that infamous hacker Edward Snowden provided documents that proved the NSA and GCHQ were up to no good. Both groups had hacked into a Dutch company that's responsible for manufacturing and supplying 2 billion SIM cards per year, from AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and more. This hack suggests that the agencies would then now have access to billions of unique encryption keys, which could potentially allow them to bypass wireless providers and monitor both the voice and data transmissions of every user that has a SIM card made by the same company. It's a lot of options. The company had been the target of at least 2 sophisticated intrusions, and they believed the NSA and the GCHQ were responsible, but the company then denied that the hack was successful in gaining access to these encryption keys. Let's just hope that that's the case. I'm just gonna delete my history. Anyways. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Spy Pod. Nowadays, it feels like there's a new iPhone or iGadget every other day. Music is personal. Spotify is almost too personal at times. But if we go way back to the early days of the iPod, we can find Apple's secret iPod. Listen to Bruno Mars while you search for smuggled uranium. We love it. Back in 2005, former Apple software engineer David Shayer partnered up with the US Department of Energy to create this new spy gadget. This special iPod was designed to test radiation on the go without drawing any attention from the public. I wonder if that came with the new iOS update this week. This was, of course, top secret information back in the day, so what do you think is happening now? Your next Google Home Mini could be working for the government. In our number 8 spot today, we have caller ID. Back to our boy Snowden for this one. In 2013, it was revealed by The Guardian that, according to documents that were leaked by Snowden, the Obama administration has allowed the NSA to collect different caller information from Verizon. This was done through what was called a business records provision of the Patriot Act that was established under the presidency of George W. Bush. It allowed the government to order Verizon to hand over call information every day. All those breakups, all those prank calls. Give them. This information included things like the time, location, and the duration of the call. The information began being collected under the Bush administration in 2001, and they were collected from AT&T, Verizon, and Bell South. Of course, once these documents were leaked and this information became public knowledge, US officials began trying to reassure the public that this surveillance was somehow necessary and was actually a program vital to national security. Yet, oddly, many people rightfully felt like the spying was an unnecessary invasion of their privacy. Just a tad. In our number 7 spot today we have bird drones. Might as well include some bird conspiracies while we're here, why not? First of all, it's worth mentioning, a large amount of people believe birds are just drones that spy on us. Specifically pigeons, which is insane to me. Pigeons downtown are wild. They're way too close for comfort, but I don't think they're drones sent to spy on us. Bird drone isn't a new concept by any means. Back in the early 60s, the CIA had this secret program called Project Aqualine, where they used small drones with a low radar cross-section and a tiny camera. They began working on it in 1965, and the first prototype, well, it was a bit obvious. Not so secretive, this one. It weighed over 100 pounds. It was this massive eagle, but the only way to catch it after it was done recon was to fly it into a nest, which broke something almost every test flight. Do we think birds are spying on us? Seagulls are definitely guilty of something. They're hiding something, those sneaky guys. In our number 6 spot today we have PRISM. The worst part of training for any job is the PowerPoint you have to watch on day 1. There's always a health and safety video from like 1987, long before WMIS ever existed. It's absolutely eye-opening. But believe it or not, the CIA also needs to watch a PowerPoint or two when it comes to their training. This 41-page PowerPoint was leaked back in 2013 when Edward Snowden leaked an unbelievable amount of documents. I mean, he's already been mentioned 3 times on this list so far. It included this 41-page PowerPoint describing a program that was called PRISM. PRISM costs about $20 million a year, and it began back in 2007. The PowerPoint program confirmed that the NSA has access to servers belonging to massive tech giants such as Google, Skype, or you guessed it, YouTube. Smash that thumbs up for Snowden, folks. He's watching this one with us. In our number 5 spot today we have listening to world leaders. Back in 2013, again, Edward Snowden released a plethora of classified documents, and it was leaked that the United States was spying on Germany, France, and Spain. It is said that the government tapped 35 phones, and not just anyone's phones, but the phones of world leaders. Of course, when some of them found out after the leak, they were quick to point out how spying between friends is not okay. Yeah, they pulled out the friend card. That cuts deep. It was, however, also released that world leaders were not the only ones being spied on, as it was found that the NSA was monitoring phone calls in Spain, and these were just random individuals. Anyone. And it wasn't just like some here or there, it was said that it was about 60 million calls in just 1 month. That's so much gossip. In our number 4 spot today we have military dolphins. Yes, I said military dolphins. We're gonna get weird now. Iran has plenty of nuclear capabilities, but they also have trained dolphins now too. So, good game, folks. Back in 2000, Iran bought this fleet of trained dolphins from Russia. Just Russians doing things, but they were trained supposedly by the Soviet Union to attack ships. And yes, even people. We have Navy SEALs and military dolphins. Is this Aquaman 2? What is going on? Well, recently, like 2018 recent, satellite photos revealed a Russian naval base in Syria with pens that are commonly used for holding, you guessed it, dolphins. Russia and the US have a fleet of trained dolphins to detect mines, but now Iran is in the mix as well. In our number 3 spot today we have hotel recordings. Have you ever been to a sketchy hotel or Airbnb? If so, comment down below. Tell us your experience. Hotels are meant to feel like a second home, or at least they're supposed to be secure. Back in 1990, the late Marion Barry, who was once mayor of Washington, was being recorded by the FBI and DC police while he was in his hotel room taking part in some illegal narcotics and such with a friend. Barry went to prison after he was set up, but that still didn't stop him from becoming mayor once again when he was released. I've seen on Reddit a bunch of people finding hidden cameras in their rooms. It's so gross. What a nightmare. In our number 2 spot today, we have the secret hospital phone calls. Lance Armstrong, not to be confused with Neil Armstrong, although I'm sure we're listening to his phone as well. Lance Armstrong won the Tour de France 7 times from 1999 to 2005. Impressive on multiple fronts. Now, it's more than likely you've heard about some happenings with Lance, some scandals and whatnot. But how did all of this come out? Well, it started in July of 2004. Greg LeMond, 3-time Tour de France winner, he secretly recorded himself having a conversation with Stephanie McGilvin, because Stephanie apparently overheard a conversation while Lance was in the hospital being treated for testicular cancer. She heard some private medical information. She then told Greg what she had heard. Lance admitted to using steroids to a doctor. Armstrong insisted this conversation with medical staff never happened, but come October 2012, the anti-doping agency confirmed Armstrong had been using throughout his career. The Tour de France stripped him of his titles, and from here things got even more out of control when Lance's attorney said the FBI was investigating the leak as well. Next time you talk to your doctor, make sure the FBI, or maybe even your friends, just stay out of it. In our number 1 spot today, we have the secret app. At one point or another, we all got the secret Vault app on our phone. Hide messages, photos, whatever you want. These were the classic iPod Touch days, where the app was purposefully designed to look like another app in case anybody went snooping through your phone. But how secure is that app to begin with? That little 4-number combination you set might not be strong enough. Back in June 2021, Australia saw hundreds of criminals caught after a 3-year operation was complete. The FBI had been trying to crack this case for so long, but what happened was these cell phones that came from the black market, they have a calculator app on the device that was secretly a platform for criminals to message each other safely. Shipments, trafficking weapons, contracts, horrible stuff with horrible people, you name it. The FBI was able to intercept over 20 million messages in over 45 different languages. Operation Trojan Shield. Great name. Actually, I'll be right back. I have to go delete a few apps real quick. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Long Island serial killer. Also known as the Craigslist Ripper, the LISK is an unidentified suspect who is believed to have taken the lives of 10 to 16 people over the last 20 years. The victims so far that are known have been sex workers who used Craigslist to advertise their work. After the disappearance of Shannon Gilbert, police were searching an area along the Ocean Parkway, and that is when they began to discover the remains of the victims. The first 4 were found in December of 2010, with another 6 being found in March and April of 2011. As of December 2015, the FBI is now officially involved in the investigation. There has been a suspect in the case, but any formal charges have not been laid in terms of these crimes. The most recent evidence in regards to the case was a belt found at the scene of the crime, which may potentially belong to the killer. At the same time, it was announced that new scientific evidence was being used in the investigation, but these announcements came just last year, so we have yet to receive any further updates. Hopefully this case is solved quickly so that the family of the victims can receive justice and this terrible person is off the streets for good. In our number 9 spot today, we have The Watcher. In the summer of 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus had just bought their new 6-bedroom, $1.3 million home in Westfield, New Jersey, and began to do some renovations prior to them moving in. While sorting through some of the mail, they found a small white envelope addressed to, quote, the new owner, so they opened it up and began reading. The letter started off with warm greetings, but quickly turned strange. The couple knew the letter was directed to them because it had mentioned the vehicle they drove, the couple's children, as well as the writer's distaste for the renovations that were being done. If this letter wasn't already creepy enough, it was signed off as The Watcher. I cannot explain to you guys how quickly I would have had that house back up for sale if I received this letter. Over the next few weeks, the family continued to receive more letters from The Watcher, and the letters began to include more personal information. The couple was unsure of where to go or if they should continue their move into this new house, to which I would say, absolutely not. People began to speculate who the Watcher could be, but there was no concrete evidence, and to this day, we still don't know. In our number 8 spot today, we have Amy Lynn Bradley. On March 21st, 1998, Amy and her family boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas, which was a Royal Caribbean cruise. On March 24th, after a fun night on the ship, Amy was hanging out and having a couple drinks with the ship's band, and one of the members explained that she parted ways with them around 1 a.m. After this, around 5:15 a.m., Amy's father said he saw her sleeping sitting on the cabin balcony. Unfortunately, however, once 6 a.m. rolled around, she wasn't there anymore, and this was the beginning of the mystery. Once it was realized that Amy was missing, extensive searches were launched for full days before they ended up being called off when no signs or traces of Amy had been found. While this is all super mysterious and nobody really had anything to go on, the plot only thickens with this story. After her disappearance, people began to report seeing Amy. One sighting was by Canadian tourists in 1998 who said that they had seen a woman who resembled Amy and who had tattoos that matched hers on a beach. A member of the United States Navy said that he saw her in a brothel and said that she told him her name was Amy and she asked for help, saying she wasn't allowed to leave. The most recent alleged sighting comes in 2005 when a woman claimed she saw Amy in a department store in Barbados. She said that Amy entered the restroom with 3 men who then threatened her if she didn't follow through on some sort of a deal. The men left briefly and the witness said the woman turned to her and said her name was Amy and that she was from Virginia and needed help, but the men returned right after to take her away again. This story is devastatingly sad and has so many turns, and to this day no one knows exactly what happened to Amy or if these witness sightings were accurate at all. In our number 7 spot today we have Lester Eubanks. If you're a fan of unsolved mysteries, you might be familiar with this story. Lester is a man who was convicted and sentenced to prison in 1966 for taking someone's life. In December of 1973, Lester was part of an honor assignment that gave him the opportunity to be at the mall to do some Christmas shopping. While at the mall, he ended up escaping custody and has been on the run ever since. Through investigations into his family and friends, police were led to a center for troubled youth where he was said to have been working, but Lester was nowhere to be found when they got there. The most recent development in this case came recently in 2019 when Lester's biological son agreed to give a DNA sample which could be used to link Lester to recent crimes and maybe give an idea on where he could be hiding, but FBI policy says you cannot search using a family member's DNA. It's crazy that someone could be on the run for that long without anyone recognizing or finding them, and it makes me really wonder if anyone in his new life knows about his dark past. In our number 6 spot today we have Jim Gray. Jim Gray was an incredibly important computer scientist who was responsible for many computer advancements that changed things for all of us. Other than being a computer scientist, he was also an experienced and skilled sailor, and one day on January 28, 2007, he set sail for a short trip so he could head out and spread his mother's ashes as she had recently passed away. As he began his trip, Jim spoke to his wife on the phone and said he would call her once he got back in range. After their phone call, he called his daughter as well and left a little message for her, and then he was off on his trip, but unfortunately he never ended up returning. Jim's wife, Donna, was the one who raised the alarm bells as she was away on a trip, but like I mentioned, Jim said he would call her later, and he never did. This is the point when the huge searches begin. Thousands of images of the area where Jim or his boat might be were uploaded to the Amazon Mechanical Turk for people to look through and see if they could find any kind of signs, but to no avail. Jim also had an automatic emergency position indicating beacon on his ship, but whatever happened to Jim and the ship clearly didn't meet the requirements, or perhaps it had some sort of malfunction, or maybe it was even turned off. To this day, no one knows what happened to Jim or his boat, as no sign or trace of either has ever been found. The theories of what may have happened are endless and range from Jim intentionally disappearing to him being kidnapped for his computer skills and brain in order to do some kind of inside job, and literally everything in between. There most definitely are theories that are seemingly more likely than others, but at the end of the day, they are all a possibility. In our number 5 spot today we have Patricia Meehan. This is a story that really gives me the creeps because it's just so strange. On April 20th, 1989, Patricia Bernadette Meehan was in a car accident on Highway 200 near Circle, Montana. Witnesses saw her driving her car on the wrong side of the road, which led to her crashing into an off-duty police dispatcher, Carol Heights. Carol was luckily uninjured in the crash and got out of her vehicle right away. Upon exiting her vehicle, Carol saw Patricia also exit her vehicle, walk up to her, and just stare at her without saying a word. Patricia then walked away, climbing over a fence, and stood staring at the accident before walking away and then disappearing. Like, I have goosebumps just talking about this right now, I'm not even joking, it's the weirdest thing. A search began immediately but turned up little results. There have been thousands of reported sightings of Patricia that have potentially given police leads to her whereabouts, but she still has never been found. In our number 4 spot today we have Lauren Spirer. On June 3rd, 2011, in Bloomington, Indiana, 20-year-old university student Lauren disappeared after a night out with friends. Lauren was from Greenburgh, New York, but had been attending Indiana University. A few hours after being seen leaving her apartment, her boyfriend texted her, only to receive a response several hours later from an employee of a bar who had found her phone. Not much is known about Lauren's disappearance, but it said she left her apartment at around 12:30 a.m., stopped at the bar where her phone was found, and was last seen around 4:30 a.m. leaving a friend's off-campus apartment. Over the course of the years, Lauren's family has tried following every lead they have to find out what happened to her, but have yet to find the answers that they deserve. In our number 3 spot today, we have George Smith. George Allen Smith and his wife Jennifer Hagel Smith had just married and were aboard the MS Brilliance of the Seas, which is a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, as they were doing a Mediterranean cruise for their honeymoon. On July 5th, 2005, the ship was somewhere just off of the coast of Turkey when it was discovered that George had disappeared. The night he was last seen, he was intoxicated from both alcohol as well as prescription drugs, and there was blood evidence found in his cabin as well as on the side of the ship. There were 2 main theories in regards to his disappearance, the first being that his intoxication led to him falling overboard the ship, and the other was that perhaps a robbery had gone bad and foul play had been involved. This case was investigated for over a decade, with even the FBI and their mafia division getting involved at one point, but despite this, neither George, his body, or what really happened to him has ever been found. There have been many assumptions made over the years, but 16 years later it is still a mystery. In our number 2 spot today, we have the cattle crimes. Okay, so for this one, there were some documents that became declassified, and this is when they revealed this really grim FBI investigation that took place in the mid-1970s at the request of US Senators Floyd Haskell of Colorado and Carl Curtis of Nebraska. I guess there was some weird sort of connection between these horrific things being done to cattle across as many as 21 states. In a letter from 1975, Senator Haskell was able to identify 130 of these strange, macabre cases in Colorado alone. All of the cases were eerily similar, which is really unsettling considering the details. In most of these cases, the cattle would have their left ear, left eye, rectum, and reproductive organs all missing. All of the blood was drained from the carcasses, but there was no blood on the ground around them, nor were there any footprints. How absolutely horrifying is that? Some people chose to believe that the cause for these was mysterious helicopters and UFOs, but there's a letter from Senator Curtis to the FBI director that says, quote, "The series of incidents stretching from Oklahoma to Nebraska in which cattle have been dismembered in some kind of strange witchcraft cult." I'm not gonna lie, I don't think UFOs or witches did it. It wasn't until 1979 that the FBI was granted jurisdiction to begin investigating these weird happenings, and when they did, they determined that most of the instances were a result of, quote, "normal predator and scavenger activity." And while that answer sounds a little fishy at best, the documents went forward to reveal that not all of the instances could be accounted for. Also, the idea of it being a completely normal scenario also contradicts reports that say that the techniques used in these horrible instances were very professional and sometimes even referred to as being conducted with surgical precision. I'm sorry, but a wolf or a coyote or a bear or whatever predator you want to say did this, ripping apart its meal isn't exactly a surgically precise operation. No arrests were ever made, and while it was deemed solved, a ton of mystery still surrounds these stories to this day. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Yuba County Five. On February 24th, 1978, 5 men from Yuba City, California attended a basketball game at California State University. All 5 men went missing after this night, and several days later, the group's car was found abandoned in a remote area of the Plumas National Forest that was way out of the way from where they would have been. There was no reason for the car to have been abandoned because it was in totally fine working condition when it was found. In June of 1978, 4 of the men were found passed away near a trailer camp that was deep in the forest, but the 5th man has still never been found. There is a lot of strange information about this case, such as how one of them starved to death even though he was surrounded by food. There's truly too much to cover about this story that I unfortunately don't have time for, so if you're interested, I would highly recommend looking up this case, as it truly is unexplainable and just totally terrifying. There's a really great recent My Favorite Murder episode where Karen really dives into this story if you want to hear more.